There's a lot to break down in all this, and I've got just the guy to help us here. Joining us live, constitutional law attorney and former Arizona Supreme Court Justice Andrew Gould is my first guest tonight, up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. Judge, thank you for joining us here on the show. And as somebody who has worked on the state level in Arizona, let's talk about this relationship. Does the governor have a case suing the White House over this move here?
Thank you, Jim, for having me on tonight. No, he doesn't. There's the insurrection statute, but there's another statute. It's 10 U.S.C. 12406 that allows the president to call out the National Guard after a request to the governor. But the law says if the president makes that request, the governor shall call out the National Guard. So there really isn't a lot of discretion there. Frankly, under either that statute or just bringing out federal officers, President Trump has the authority to bring out the National Guard, and he can fill the streets with federal officers to put down the riots and the activities that are going on in LA right now. No question legally.
Is there a legal difference between deploying the National Guard for something like immigration enforcement versus what we normally see them for natural disaster or riot response, which is mentioned as something we saw in Los Angeles in the past?
You know, Jim, the National Guard's been called out in a lot of different situations. The natural disasters is one, but it's been called out by the president. It's been federalized by the president. That's the term, because it's taking a state National Guard and putting it under the president's control dozens of times. The most famous example is in 1957 when in Little Rock High School, they refused to allow, I believe it was 9 black students to enter the high school in violation of federal civil rights laws. And so President Eisenhower federalized the National Guard so that those students could go in. We saw President Kennedy do that, President LBJ do that. We saw it done in the Rodney King riots in 1992. It's been done many, many times when the people of a community are placed in grave risk of physical harm and there's riots, property damage like we're seeing right now.
And you know, one of the comparisons that people on the left, on the other side of this issue, have made is what we saw here in D.C. on January 6th, and that term insurrection, which gets thrown around a lot, and I think sometimes it's used as a catch-all, and I don't know if we're ever at the actual legal definition of what's considered to be an insurrection there. Are there similarities that you can draw between seeing what we saw in Washington on January 6th, the behavior there, versus what we're seeing in California right now?
Well, I don't want to draw comparisons between the two events,
Sure.
but I will say this. If you're going to attack police officers, destroy property, threaten people, cause physical violence, and engage in these types of mass demonstrations that engage in incitement and breaking the law, then you well could fit under that statute. So, I mean, the issue here is as simple as this, Jim. People are in grave risk of danger. We've seen how this goes before. We've seen these types of things in 1992 with the Rodney King riots, all the way up to the summer of 2020. People die when this happens. People are seriously injured. Property is damaged. The president has a responsibility to step in and stop that and protect people's property and their safety. He has to do it.
You're in Arizona, and you are not a member of the judiciary at this point. So I'm curious.
Retired.
Exactly. And I'm sure these days maybe you're happier to be on the other side. But as you look at the situation, I mean, Arizona really was, for many intents and purposes here, ground zero for the immigration debate in 2024 down there on the border there. And when you look at the last few years, has this swelled to what is considered to be a crisis for a state like Arizona?
Well, it has. The border's under control now. Here's a fascinating thing, Jim, about you bringing up Arizona. In Arizona, for many years, the state tried to enforce immigration laws. You see that in Texas, too, where Governor Abbott tried to implement Operation Lone Star. And the Obama DOJ and the Biden DOJ aggressively fought efforts by both Arizona and Texas to try to gain control over an immigration issue and enforce immigration law. Now you see Democrats, governors like Newsom, impeding the federal government's authority to enforce immigration law. In other words, The shoe is completely on the other foot, where it was states can't interfere with the federal government's authority in immigration law. Now states, California as Exhibit A, is doing just that. And the problem with that is it looks hypocritical. It looks like the law on immigration is being used for political ends. And what I fear even more, Jim, is for the average person out there that doesn't really understand the justice system that well, when they see this kind of flip-flop and a governor impeding a president in enforcing immigration laws, it makes people lose trust in the system. I'm concerned.
Judge, I know that there's a whole states' right argument that we can get into, but I'm out of time on that. But I would love to bring you back on because, again, you have such a unique perspective. Thank you for joining us here, joining us live on the Final Five. That is Andrew Gould. Judge, we appreciate you. And we come back on the Final Five. John Reed is running for lieutenant governor in Virginia. He happens to be my guest. We're going to talk about his run and Loudoun County schools. We're back after this.